Welcome to the William Hill Sports Book Club, and on this edition it's a book called My Beautiful Sisters by Khalida Popal, co-founder and first captain of the first Afghanistan women's national football team.
Establishing the first Afghanistan women's national team and captaining the team, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted something bigger than that. And I wanted to have the voice of women in the decision making.
Shortlisted for the 2024 prize, it's a powerful story, it's a painful story.
It is important, and was important to tell the stories of the real stories of the society, the community, the world, the life of refugees and being a refugee, what you really experience.
It's a true story, which is also about the importance of football and about the importance of good people.
I don't have so much power to do anything, but my only power is my story and my voice and my platform.
On this edition of the William Hill Sports Book Club, we focus on My Beautiful Sisters by Khalida Popal. Hi there, I'm Adrian Durham. This is the William Hill Sports Book Club, and welcome to a very special show. Khalida Popal has written something very powerful indeed, very important as well. My Beautiful Sisters, a story of courage, hope, and the Afghan women's football team is what it says on the cover. But inside those pages is something which hits the heart and soul of everybody who reads it, I would think. And I don't say this often, but I honestly believe that everybody should read this book. Somebody, somewhere will always get something from this book. We're privileged to have the author Khalida Popal with us for this show. Khalida, congratulations on writing such a brilliant book and on being shortlisted as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Also with us is book reader Neil Foggin from William Hill. Foggy, you are a big admirer of this book, aren't you?
Yes, very much. I'm starting to tear up now. We haven't even started talking about this book. Yeah, it's a book you got to give to everyone. It should be on the national curriculum, this book.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, actually. I think it's a serious point. We're joined as well by one of the country's best football writers, the Guardian's Susie Rack, who nearly 6 years ago brought Khalida's story to British audiences via The Guardian with an article that had a shocking headline. There was blood everywhere. The abuse case against the Afghan FA president. Susie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you coming in. You helped with the writing of this book as well, didn't you? You've covered some massive stories in your career so far. This must be right up there with the most powerful, most important that you've broken.
Yeah, I'd say it's one of the ones that matters most to me, because I really cared about the impact that it had. In that, yes, it's great that it won a couple of awards here and there. The journalism, the book is done really well and that kind of stuff. But that was never the aim. The aim was to try and push things forward and to change things for the women involved, particularly around the abuse case. And getting the president banned for life from football was a huge coup, obviously, and a step in the right direction at making things better for some of the women there. Obviously, the way the country's deteriorated, that's all rolled back significantly, but it felt at the time like it was doing something important, which is the best thing about journalism, right, is when it actually has an impact. Yeah,
change for the better as well. First few pages, Khalida, tell the reader it's a shocking book. You write about a knife, you write about blood, you receive a call from a woman with a gun saying she's about to shoot herself in the head. These are the first 2 pages we're talking about. And you write in there, it's a miracle any of us are here to tell the story. This is not a gentle introduction to the book we're about to read. It's almost like a warning to the reader, isn't it? This book is not for the faint-hearted, is it?
Listen, this book is the life stories of the people, the footballers who lived that experience. But football was the only hope and a way to feel freedom, but also save lives. It is a story of hope. So, of course, in the beginning, it's about whole extreme story that many people, maybe in Western world, don't identify themselves with that story, and because it's quite extreme. But that's the life of us and our players that they lived through. But it also shares about the hope and sisterhood and community, and how we had also fun and good time in the worst in the world.
I mean, it gets darker as well. It's a dark start. It gets darker. Understandable given the subject matter. There's an incident on page 23 when your family is forced out of Afghanistan. You go into a refugee camp in Pakistan. And the incident that I'm talking about, I can't go into detail on this. I don't think it'd be right. But it made me stop, made me take a moment, put the book down and just take a breath and think, wow, it was incredible. You witnessed the rape of a child in the book. When you're only a child yourself as well, and you're with your siblings who are younger than you, it's an incredibly powerful moment in the book, horrible moment as well. It's not an incident that you can skim read, or read through quickly, speed read. You have to take it in. You have to soak in what happens. You need to properly read it to understand it, to feel the impact of it within you as well. It's shocking. It's upsetting. Did you feel you had to include that to give the reader a true picture of everything going on? Because we get news reports, we can read what we want, we can see on TV what we want, but we don't really get the authentic view from your eyes of what actually was going on there, which was horrific.
It was very difficult for myself to put myself again into that, what I have experienced and I have witnessed, to go through trauma again. But it is important, it was important to tell the stories of the real stories of the society, the community, the world, the life of refugees and being a refugee, what you really experience, the life of women in dangerous countries, in war-torn countries. That's our reality. That's the reality of the world, where unfortunately sometimes it's just the headline of the news and it's pick and choose stories and it's not depth stories. But this is the reality of today in the world, what many people around the world is facing.
And I think, Susie, when you received that, so you're basically listening to Khalida's story and then writing it down. That was effectively your role in this. But when you're hearing that, you will have your own human emotions and reaction to the stories you heard. Do you remember how you felt when you heard that story?
Yeah, we were sat in Khalida works at FC Nordsjælland in Denmark, and we were sat in the club canteen or something, wasn't it? Just over a table, going through this over about a 3-4 hour period. We were going over some of that stuff, and yeah, I mean, it's horrific. You both become slightly immune to it, because obviously I'd done the abuse case, which was the horrific rape of, I spoke to 4 or 5 of the women who were abused at the time by the President of the Federation. Really gruesome stuff. So you're kind of sort of semi almost hardened to the story, at the same time as recognising that it's really important to be in there, because I mean, I said a minute ago, the headlines today about refugees and their experience, it is very much oh, they're coming over here for a great life and things like that. The life of a refugee is actually so much more traumatic than we often see day to day. And so having that kind of stuff in there felt significant. And also you sort of have to contextualise it to not let it impact you too much, because when you think about her age at that time and what she's witnessing and how she's having to shield her siblings from what she's seeing and things like that too, it's a real sort of look at childhood and what it means, and what it means to lose it so early on and to have to grow up so quickly, and the sort of trauma that puts into your body for the entirety of your life, that once you get to safety somewhere is still going to impact you years on years. And when you're chatting to Khalida over a table about it, however many years later, for this book, it's not nice for her to experience having to retell it. It's not nice for me to have to listen to it, but it's just necessary to be able to kind of really explain the scenario and the situation and how sport was able to impact things in the most horrific of circumstances.
Yeah, and you actually say at the end of the book that you didn't really want to tell the story. You didn't really want to write the book, did you? I mean,
she really didn't.
No, but I think we know it's important that you did write the book, because it's educated, certainly me, you, Neil, as well. A lot of people, anybody who reads it is going to be educated by it. Do you still feel like those feelings that you shouldn't or didn't want to write the book?
As mentioned, that it was not easy to go through, because when you tell a story, you have to live through. You have to go back to the memories, to the feelings, and this story is so important and dear to me. So it needed attention and needed being present. So I couldn't just tell it in a very surfacey way. I wanted to live through, and that was the kind of the difficult part to put myself through. But it was important. It is important, and especially that what my country is going through, Afghanistan, and the women of the country, this is a way to kind of like stand for justice and at least share what women of Afghanistan is going through, or any refugee around the world is going through. I don't have like so much power to do anything, but my only power is my story and my voice and my platform. And if through this story and through this book I can do something to raise their voices, to tell the world what's happening, even 2, 3, 4 people that can read the book, that's a way I can say that I have played my part and I have not stayed quiet.
I think there's more dark moments in the book. There's one I do want to talk about, and it's where you have a woman dousing herself in petrol, setting fire to herself in the book. Again, it's another incredibly shocking moment. And your quote in the book is, quote, "If she couldn't control how she lived, she could control how she died." I don't think there's many people in this country can relate to that being a norm. Do you know what I mean? And that's why at so many points, I literally had to put the book down at several points because I just had to process what the book was telling me and knowing that it was all true.
Yeah. So this is the pile of books, and Nancy, who also reads with us, had told me that you need to read this next. So I got on the train, come into London as normal, picked the book up, started reading it. Within minutes, I'm crying my eyes out. People are asking me. I had to keep putting it down because it just takes over, and it takes you to places where you have to go. You've got to go, and it gets you. And even now, and listening now and taking everything in, I'm going again.
Yeah, it's definitely emotional without any question. I think that you're far too hard boiled if you don't find any emotion, feel any emotion from this. And I can remember you read this book before me,
yes,
and you kept messaging me, and you haven't done this about any other book.
No.
You kept messaging me saying, "Have you started it? Are you reading it?"
Yeah.
And in the end, I just had to give up what I was reading and start reading this just to stop him messaging. But once I'd started reading, and you just get a couple of pages in, and you've got all those dark moments, you're thinking, okay, I get it now. It's too important to ignore. There's another quote. This is later on in the book. "How many bodies would pile up as they forced us to stop playing?" This is the reality. They were trying to stop you playing football. Okay, they were being nice to you in some ways, but they were trying to stop you playing football. And then you're thinking, hang on, the bodies piling up. There's dead bodies because they don't want women to play football. It's absurd. We have men in this country who don't like the fact that women play football, but there aren't really, correct me if I'm wrong, Susie, but I don't think there's dead bodies because men in this country don't like women playing football. That's incredible to take in. It takes a lot to read that and understand exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah, it is. It is extreme again in so many ways, but football for the women of Afghanistan, for us, was the only window to freedom. And some of them who felt the freedom didn't want to give up. And that's why it became a movement for us, and beyond just the game. We really never focused on football tricks and skills, how to build it. It was more about how to make our movement stronger, to be a stronger voice for our sisters who lost their voices or who never actually owned their voices.
And I think that it's not all dark, by the way. There is the joy in it is when you're playing football. The joy you describe when a goal is scored, for example, in one part of the book, it really brought a smile to my face. And you actually point out it doesn't really matter about the quality of the football. It was the fact that you were enjoying playing together, making friendships, playing a game you loved, playing that together. That was the joyous part of it. So if you're planning to read this book but thinking it's a little bit too dark for me, just bear in mind there are some really positive, wonderful, truly wonderful moments in it. That must have been when you're experiencing those joyous moments in such a dark place at such a dark time. Those joyous moments, they must still be with you in your heart. You must feel those still.
Yes, that's the beauty of football, right? And so many people who not even played professionally, but played in grassroots level, they know what I'm talking about, especially about the joy, about the fun, when you're together and you put stones as goalposts, or your bags or your sandals as goalposts, and you just start kicking the ball. The fun, the experience that you have together, and the wins and the loses, and and the mistakes that happens or someone get knocked. Those are the fun side of it and the joy that we had together, and we had fun. Because football, and I always say that the reason I say football was a way for freedom for us was when you face so much pressure, right? As young girl, you're told like your ears is like full of all those sentences. You have to act certain way, do certain things because you're a girl. You need to be prepared. From very young age, you're told how to live your life because of you are becoming someone's wife. You are gatekeeper for the honor of the man in the family, and this honor killing is also very part of the culture in Afghanistan. And women are seen, or girls are seen as the honor keeper for the family, for the man, for the brothers, husband, and father of the family. So you have to really act certain way to make sure that your father and brother or husband is proud and you're taking care of the honor of the family. And so there is so much pressure on you as girl child, as women, young women. Nobody tells you how life is until like you really play football, and you don't think about your brother, your family, your anything. The only thing you're thinking is about the moments that football creates, the fun, the joy, the unity, and the craziness. You're loud, you're screaming, you're just you. You're showing up and you're just making fun. You're laughing sometimes. I cannot control my laugh. So when someone is making a mistake, I just sit and laugh so loud.
You should see me play
Of course,
football.
it is embarrassing others, but I tried my best, but I really can't sometimes.
No, the joy of the game, it's worth celebrating. And I mentioned before, Susie, that there are some men in England who they've got a very passive-aggressive way of expressing their disapproval of women playing football. They'll go on social media and they'll say that the women should be making the tea at halftime or whatever ridiculous stuff it is. They'll go on and on about how women goalkeepers are no good or whatever. Men in Afghanistan are not passive-aggressive on this subject. They're just totally aggressive on the subject. The moment when Khalida and her pals are playing football and a man walks onto their pitch, calls them all, gets a knife out and stabs the football. I mean, in my mind's eye, I'm thinking about how ludicrous that situation is, that he's gone on to stab a football, which, by the way, should be a sacred object, a football. He stabbed the football. I can't... I mean, the fear that must have been going through them at that point. It kind of... I don't want to say that, men in this country who bring down women's football, that means nothing. I think that's something that absolutely needs addressing. This is on another level altogether, isn't it? It's incredible.
Oh yeah, and I think like what's special about this book is that I think a lot of people go, well, why football? Why is that the thing that brought these women together and became the tool? And why were they, like, if that is the response that they get, like physical attack, like abuse, like why are they still doing it? And why isn't it something else? Why isn't it a more political, like directly political act or something? But then I think like having it in the context of today, where we're seeing what is going on for women in Afghanistan under the Taliban at the moment, where they're not even allowed to talk to each other in the street, like their voices have literally been completely silenced, then you start to get a bit of an idea of how just the smallest little acts of pleasure can have a big impact and be a rebellion in of itself. So like those kind of incidents you think would, kind of destroy Khalida and her schoolmates' like desire to play, but the reality is very different. It spurs them on. It's like they have found a like ounce of joy within a really, really horrific scenario. It's not easy to be able to coordinate it, as the book like shows, and so they latch onto that and they use that as their tool against this oppression, which is obviously hugely powerful. But like I think put it in the context of what is happening at the moment just makes it all the more stark, because all those things that seem really far-fetched, surely it's not that bad, surely it wasn't quite as bad as that, and then you see what's going on now and you're like, okay, this is significant. And also the fact that it's telling the story of all these women whilst women can't speak is, like, I think a really powerful time for it to be coming out as well in that sense too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the William Hill Sports Book Club. We're with Khalida Popal, author of the shortlisted My Beautiful Sisters. This is the William Hill Sports Book Club. I'm Adrian Durham. Khalida Popal, author of My Beautiful Sisters, is with us for this one. Also with Neil Foggin, book reader for William Hill and award-winning football writer Susie Rack from The Guardian. I want to go to chapter 8, page 85 of the book, and I'll set the scene here. The women's team in Afghanistan have been given a place to train, but it's a field at a NATO base where they'd have to clear the area if planes were landing. They could be targeted by Taliban terror attacks, so not ideal. You describe it, Khalida, as being set up for failure. There was nowhere for the women to wash after they'd trained and played the game. It's that kind of situation. So the women's team had just done very well at an international tournament before we get to this page. When they got back, some women were forced to give up playing. The women had done so well, they had shamed the men, and so the men in the family had forced the women to give up playing. This really happened. It's incredible. Khalida, you've kindly agreed to read the next bit for us. It's the whole of page 85. So on the NATO base, your training ground, you're not allowed to speak to the soldiers. You took your phone out to take a photo of some street art, and then this happened. Take it away.
I felt the sudden push of cold metal against my head. The soldier had panicked, and moving quickly, he launched the end of his gun towards my face, pressing the end of the barrel into my temple. "What the f*** are you doing?" I said, "There is a threat towards me, towards your life here." I was shocked, scared, and angry. Yes, I was standing outside the NATO ISAF compound, but I was far from being a threat. I stood there, grumping my phone, frozen. He hadn't expected me to speak English, and I could tell that I had taken him by surprise. It was obviously nothing compared to the shock I felt, but I had angered him now. "Stay still, I will blow your brains out," he proffered. "Listen, you came to my country to protect us, not to blow our heads. Not to blow our heads off," I reasoned. "Why the f*** did you come to our country if you don't know what you're here for?" "I'm not a threat to you. I don't have anything on me, any gun, any weapons. I'm a civilian, and you're holding a gun into my head, unprovoked. I'm authorized to take whatever action I deem necessary if I feel threatened," he replied, deepened. He was right, of course. It wouldn't be hard for him to justify his actions because he only needed his word against mine. And if I wasn't there not to give my word, how could anyone prove I wasn't threatening him? He was supposed to be here to help us against the Taliban, but here he was, just another man threatening a woman. My parents tell me this country is my home, but if I can't feel safe in my home, where can I? I was playing with fire, but I felt the pressure on my head ease slightly, although I had beaten back. My blushness had worked in my favor this time. Disarming him, and literally I grabbed the holder I had dropped to the floor and hurried away without looking back, leaping on the small window of opportunity to remove myself.
Really appreciate you reading that.
Thank you.
I mean, you reading
I
it.
had the pictures in my...
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah. And you can probably feel the gun on your face, and it's just incredible. And this, let's just reiterate, if you're wondering, is that right? This wasn't an Afghanistan man doing this. This was a soldier from a NATO base sent to effectively protect you, and he's got a gun at you, basically you know he could shoot at any moment and there will be no repercussions for him. It's an incredible moment.
You know that in Afghanistan, we always faced and felt the anger from man. If it was the man from the country or the man who came to protect us from NATO or ISAF soldiers, there was so much angriness. I don't know why they came in our country, if the whole idea was to protect us and support us. And I understand fighting there, and maybe the soldiers were not there to really, it wasn't their choices to be in that country, but continuously fighting, continuously being in the war, that anger is understandable, but they were supposed to protect us, and especially the women and girls of Afghanistan.
So what makes one of the remarkable things, it's a very basic question I'm about to ask you, please forgive me, but that experience that you've had at the hand there of a Western soldier, and knowing what you know about Afghanistan men, you seem to have a very reasonable approach to men. You've never met me before today. We've messaged each other. You've been absolutely fine. You don't have a thing against men generally, even though men, as you were growing up into a young woman, treated you incredibly badly, and I admire that. I'm grateful for that, actually, because it would have been so easy for you to be anti-men, as it were, but you're not, which is incredible.
No, it's because my grandfather was my first teacher. And my father, amazing person who always stood up and protected and supported me. I'm here where I am is not just because of my mom and the women in my family, which they are so strong, amazing, but because in a male-dominated and war-torn country, if the man is not standing for you, and they have an incredible role there, if they are not standing and protecting you and putting themselves in a very vulnerable position, because it wasn't like only women like me who managed to get there, if it wasn't the support of the man in the country. So my brothers, my grandfather, amazing feminist, he told me he was my first teacher, and he keep telling me, hey, especially in there is like a teenager year, right? You start thinking about having a partner, and in a culture like Afghanistan, after certain age, women start thinking about having husband and how like their family life. My grandfather keep pushing me that I have to study, I have to be an independent woman, which is so rare that in a country like Afghanistan, very traditional and religious country, a man tell the daughter to be an independent, not look at the man to bring you money or save your life. You have to make yourself independent woman, where any man will be happy and appreciate living with you. So don't think that man will come and save your life. You have to stand for yourself and be an independent, strong woman, where in Afghanistan, the way it is, the culture works is that the families of a man choose you, and it's like you're going for shopping. It's very strange and kind of weird way of giving example, but it is reality. It's like you're going in a shop, and then you pick and choose which toy you want to buy, and that's how you're getting married in Afghanistan. The families come, and then they talk to each other, and then the next day you're bride to in a new family. So it's like from one family to another. So that's what my family didn't want, and my family was very strong in that, and saying that my daughter should, if she wants to choose anybody in her life, she should be the one choosing. Education is so important. What you're doing is so important, and your advocacy.
The positive influence of your family is something that really shines through in the book, and we'll come back to your family a little bit later on, because one or two things I wanted to talk about with regard to your family. I think, Foggy, one of the main questions about this book is, which bit got you? Okay, this is what I've been asked from those who've read it. Which bit got you? So for me, the page that Khalida just read was the bit that got me, because I can imagine, as much as you can, being in that situation where you're completely helpless. You're literally, your life is in the hands of somebody who probably could easily pull the trigger and there'd be no repercussions. But there's so many bits in this book that get you. Which bit got you?
There's too many. There's too many. Even like the dedication, that got me. And then I'm reading the quote from Shankly and going to the quote of the head of the Taliban, and I'm looking at that, and that's making me really angry. And then you go through the book, but again on page 2, when you talk about taking that call of a girl who's got the gun to her head, it got me all the way through. I don't think there's a bit. I think the whole book got me. What kept me going was the family unit. That sort of was like the tonic. Was this family? You were all in it together as your family and the family of the football family. We're all in this together, and I think that's what kept me going. But there's too many bits which just got me on the train.
I must just read you talk about the Shankly quote there,
Yeah.
and the quote from the Taliban guy from the Taliban Cultural Commission. I'll read those quotes, actually. This is the beginning of the book. The Bill Shankly quote, a lot of people will know. Some people believe football is a matter of life and death. I'm very disappointed with that attitude. I can assure you it is much, much more important than that. That's Bill Shankly's famous quote. And this is from Ahmadullah Wazik, Deputy Head of the Taliban Cultural Commission. Women's sport is neither appropriate nor necessary. It's just reading that line for you. Yeah. It's a wow moment, isn't it?
You've
Susie,
reminded me about editing, like going through the editing process. I kept crying,
right.
Going over the same passages again and again and again. I think at one point there was some parts of it that were on 7th draft, and I was just I can't read this anymore because I just crying every single time I read bits of it. Even whilst writing some of the stuff, you just my husband would walk into the room and it's oh, which bit you on this time, literally floods of tears whilst writing is a really weird feeling.
So if I say which bit got you, it's Neil, there's so many.
Yeah, absolutely loads. There were a lot. I knew a lot of Khalida's story because we had worked together for a long time. On various different stories on the evacuation of players and all that kind of stuff, as well as the abuse case, and been in touch for a long time. And that, I suppose, the bits that got me were the things that surprised me, like the football, stabbing the football bit. I hadn't heard those kind of small stories, the stuff in the refugee camp that you mentioned earlier, that kind of stuff. Really, I say, they were the things that impacted me most. The things that were the almost the filler around the big events that we had covered together. So they were the things that got me more because I didn't know them.
You're listening to the William Hill Sports Book Club. This is the William Hill Sports Book Club. I'm Adrian Durham. Khalida Popal, author of My Beautiful Sisters, is with us for this one. Also with us is Neil Foggin, book reader for William Hill, and award-winning football writer Susie Rack from The Guardian. Khalida, you were made head of women's football and finance officer for the Afghanistan Football Federation. Now, this sounds great. When I got to this in the book, and I thought you'd negotiated your own roles and you got 2 big jobs with the Federation, I thought, wow, Afghanistan's changing. This is so brilliant. I actually wrote a note in the book saying, this is amazing. But it wasn't quite as it seemed, was it? What was wrong with those positions? What was wrong with you getting those jobs?
Look, it took me a long time. Really, I was trying so hard. After this, starting the whole movement and having played for the first time, made history, establishing the first Afghanistan women's national team and captaining the team, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted something bigger than that. And I wanted to have the voice of women in the decision making. The people who are making decision, I wanted to have my voice there. So that was the Football Federation of Afghanistan, because of course they were making decisions about everything about us without including us. So I wanted to be there. So I really fought hard to get there, and it took me a long time. But then there was a moment, an opportunity where the Football Federation was so annoyed with their finance officer and that position, because there were several men that filled that position, but then they end up being in corruption, stealing money and running away. So the president of football was so fed up with that, and I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity for me. And so he came up with an idea that the only way to protect and save the money is to bring someone in this position who is not brave to steal the money, who don't like exactly these words, who's not courageous and who doesn't have the guts to steal the money and in corruption. And then he came up with this term that an idea of bringing a young woman in that position will be this is the way to protect the money. And I was like, I don't care about the whole story and idea. I need to get my feet in there. I need to go and like this is a great opportunity. So I really ignored all the facts behind it, and I was like, I don't do anything about it like right now, but of course it will change. And not that I will end up in corruption, but I would just want to tell him that this is how the women work. Nothing against men. So I saw the opportunity and really grabbed and really fought, and I really had to pitch myself. You know, in Afghanistan and several countries around the world, it works differently. When you are activist and feminist, it doesn't work like the way that in Western world you stand for your right. You say that this is women's right, this is man's right. If you say stuff like this, it doesn't really work in countries like Afghanistan. The minute you stand for your right and you use the right words, that's how you will face a lot of resistance and challenges, and that's like no-go for you, even if there is a little bit of opportunity to get there. So you have to really manipulate and trick the way to, in a right way. Not in a
play the game a little bit.
Play the game, exactly. Play the game to get what you want. So that's what I did it with the support of the women in our team, the young girls who trusted and seen me as their leader. I managed to get there as a finance officer, and then because in the way the Afghanistan the Football Federation works is like you're a finance officer, then you become as an elected with the president in the. So I was selected for those 4 years period. And then I also got the job as a head of women's football committee, because that was the goal to get the committee and the leadership in the committee of Afghanistan Football Federation, Women's Football Federation. It was toughest one. It was difficult. I was the only woman. Even the first day, I remember, I still have that photo. I was the only woman and the youngest in the room. I entered the day of the election, and there was some female folks also there for the election, presidential election of Afghanistan Football Federation. And everybody looked outside because it was like a room full of men, 100 something, and they saw only one woman entering the room. I had to wear, I had to cover my head to toe, and I had to wear the clothes that not get the attention of the man in the room, and so only the president knew that he offered that position to me. The rest of his team didn't know. When I entered the room, everybody looked at me, and it was scary. I was trying my best, but I could feel the sweat in my hands, and I was shaking, and I was trying to show that how confident I am. Entering that room, sitting in the front row, just beside the president of Football Federation with the other one, and when the announcement happened, and I was selected, and the president was selected for that period. And how, all those men wanted to kind of touch me, shaking hand with me, wanted to take a photo and trying to touch me. It was horrible. I still feel it. I still feel it in my body. It was first women. They didn't see women working with them in the history of Afghanistan Football Federation. So I felt like I'm just there and trying my best to not show any reaction when they're trying to, in one way or another way, touch my body, touch me. But it was a tough one. And I every time I told myself, I know why I'm here. And it's not for this. I will not give up. It was scary. It was lonely. I didn't see any women around. I was scary. I didn't know any man around. but I had to protect myself, but also show that I'm strong and I'm not scared, and I don't show any reaction when my body is being touched.
Wow. I mean, the power of the writing is everything in this as well, Neil. I mean, one thing that you say in the book about the FA's headquarters, quote, the corridors reeked of cigarettes, body odour and chauvinism. You're taken right there. You can sense exactly what's happening there, kind of. That's how good the writing is in this book.
Yeah, it's excellent. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's got shortlisted. It got long-listed and shortlisted, is because the writing is good. It's not... The story is very powerful, but if it didn't have this beautiful writing, it wouldn't be there.
And Susie, the story that follows is, I mean, it's for people to read, so I don't want to tell the story here, but the story that follows is the stuff of movies: hiding in cars, fake passports, being set up for a crime by your own boss, your car being rammed and a gunman gets out of the car that's hit you. It's a stunning story. It's like a divide and conquer thing from the FA. They divide your family. I think your mum and brother stop speaking to you for a while. An awful thing, and they divide the team as well. Some of the team turn against you in various moments. So they've got what they wanted, the FA. They've divided and they've ruled. I recommend people listening to this read My Beautiful Sisters, because sometimes the true power of it is in the writing. And I believe that's the case here. And Susie is a journalist, and you wrote down the words that Khalida said for this book. It's an exciting storyline, ripe for movies, dare I say, but horrific for Khalida to experience. And that's the balance of, when you're hearing those stories like a car being rammed, fake passports, wow, what a story. But actually, this is real. This really happened.
Yeah, it feels really unbelievable at points. Like, you're just like, the sheer volume of it, and the her entire life story is just, it, like you say, it is a film script, really. But yeah, I suppose that she's such a brilliant storyteller. Like, you feel like you're watching a film when you're sat there chatting to her. It's not it's not difficult to turn her words into like words on a page, because she delivers colour in the way she speaks about her experiences, which is really easy. And then also, I think we have a really great relationship because we've known each other for quite a while now, in that, like, the way we view the world, the way we look at football, the way we look at like the struggle for women's rights and stuff is really similar. So like, that really helps in that, like, I could really feel her in the words. Like, I knew the way she'd want to put it down onto page, so that like really helped too. But yeah, I mean, at points you're just like, this is just so unbelievable. But then, like I said earlier, like, the just the very fact that that women today can't even speak to each other feels, if we had said that in the book, and people didn't know that it happened, like, people wouldn't believe it. But that's the reality, right? Like, these things happen, and like, we're just so removed from that life, that world. The president of the Football Federation at the time Khalida was there was a warlord. Like, he was a military warlord. Like, he, this isn't, a nice guy, someone who is just, a bureaucrat, or politician. He is like a warlord. And so, like, all of that feels very unbelievable. But, like, yeah, I think in the context of this story, it becomes more real because there is just so much of it. And then the context of what's going on today helps, like, put that context around it that makes you realise that actually this is all just, yeah, like, and this is one story, right? Like, what about all of the other women in Afghanistan? Yeah. And that's, mentioned earlier that Khalida didn't actually really want to write a book, and she says it at the end that she never really wanted to write a book. It was never that she didn't want to write a book, it was that she didn't want to tell her story, because she didn't feel like her story was significant enough to be valued above any of the other stories of any of the other women involved. And obviously, as you can see, she's an extraordinary woman who has been through a lot as an individual, but she only agreed to do the book on the basis that it was, and the reason why it's called My Beautiful Sisters is, like, to share the story of all of the women around her along that journey, and to, like, highlight the lack of their voice in using hers as well. So, like, that was a really important part of it. It was like, she never wanted it to be her story. She wanted it to be the story of the team. But the thing is her story is extraordinary and like tells the story of the team through it, which is like the important part.
And you're actually in the book as well, Susie. You come into it, page 173.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. So what I want to know is, when it is made into a movie, who plays Susie Rat? This is the big question. I want to know. Who do you want to play you?
Oh God, that's what a question. Something I've never thought about, but I think that bit should be cut from any film script because that is the least exciting bit of the journey. And if they're doing me like sat at my desk, like typing, then they've clearly picked the wrong part of the book to be turning into a film.
I disagree, but the article that you wrote, which is coming up 6 years ago now, this was a game changer, this article. So there'd been some contact before, but like I say, you enter the book, page 173, and this article in The Guardian that you wrote was what really brought it to the Western world, really, to all of our attention, so that we could realise what was happening. And let's talk about the president of the Federation, who you briefly described there, Karim. On page 171 is a shocking line in the book. One young footballer in Afghanistan gave birth to Karim's baby. It was another moment where I had to put the book down. Wow. And then you realise he's got some sort of bedroom hidden away in the offices of the FA headquarters, and you think, hang on a minute, that just isn't right at all. A man with 2 wives, at least 11 children, abused his powerful position. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And as you say in the book, he took advantage of vulnerable women, and he, this is the quote, turned the organisation into his own personal, non-consensual brothel. Now, as we know, this man has been banned. Is he still at large? Is he still? We don't know where he is.
Yeah, he was never arrested. There was an attempt to reports of an attempt to arrest him in Afghanistan, like sort of once he were, it started to move through the legal system after the article went out and stuff. But he was never caught. Like he was never, he just fled basically, and was rumoured to be living outside the country at points, and is now rumoured to be back in and has joined the Taliban, and so it's, it's the Wild West, right? Like there's no like legal structures to really enforce law there now or before, really.
Khalida, what are your thoughts towards Karim now when you think about him?
What we started like the whole campaign to get the attention to the story and the experiences of our players, the attention, what they have experienced. In so many ways I say that there was some sort of justice to get the stories to the voices of those who survive, who I call them survivors of that experience. Karim was one of those men, but there are so many who experienced that. But the fact that it shows that we stood strong together as a unit, women together stood and took down that powerful man who was claiming that he is a god, he can take any woman anytime, and he can do whatever he wants to in that country. But it showed the power of women when they stood together and really put him down from that power. And that was the whole story in the country, because that started a Me Too movement in Afghanistan that encouraged other women in different sectors, industries in Afghanistan, that they came forward and shared their experiences. Because the culture of abuse and harassment is part of the culture, being part of the culture in Afghanistan, but it becomes somehow normal in the country where people were not talking about. And women standing there for the first time in public and local TV channels talking about that, which was very strong, very difficult for me to say the words that it was first time in the TV channels of Afghanistan, a woman saying those words that people were never experienced in Afghanistan, hearing a woman talking about the sexual abuse and harassment in the culture. But that encouraged so many people in Afghanistan, even men, that they reached out and they shared their stories, how they were sexually and physically abused and harassed by the president of Afghanistan Football Federation, but also in other industries. And they were so many stories and so many people who reached out through social media thanking me for raising my voice and helping the girls to, through my voice, to tell their stories. It has changed a lot. We couldn't manage to get him in prison, but that story was shared in a very wide public domains. That is some sort of justice. He is back in power with the Taliban. So he is just back in power in Afghanistan, but also shows the real true face of Taliban as well. That they are just a group of abusive and people that they don't care, and they're using the religion.
Khalida Popal, the author of My Beautiful Sisters. You're listening to the William Hill Sports Book Club. My Beautiful Sisters by Khalida Popal is the focus for this edition of the William Hill Sports Book Club. Khalida's with us, so too Susie Rack from The Guardian, Neil Foggin, who reads all the books for William Hill. What a job, by the way, fantastic. Mentioned before about refugees, and I think this is really important because this book isn't just your story. There's some global issues that you address here, and refugees, asylum seekers is one of them. You came to Europe, first Norway, wasn't it? And then they chucked you out, and Denmark took you in, and you now live in Denmark. Asylum seekers have it very, very tough, and I'm not sure enough people realise this. So page 150 in the book, you go into great detail. There's another quote, page 161, refugees lose everything and everyone. I feel a little bit personally ashamed of the way we dehumanise asylum seekers in this country. And I know it's not just in the UK, it's a big issue heading up to another election in Ireland as well at this moment in time. France won the Football World Cup in '98 and celebrated that, and it was the team that was full of immigrants or the sons of immigrants, and then they went immediately back to hating immigrants in France. So it's not just an England issue, not just a UK issue. Your message in this book about asylum seekers, how important was it for you to get that across?
It is so important to raise awareness, but also to get some sort of seek some sort of justice. Like what I've been experiencing living in the Western world, in Europe, and I've been traveling, I had the privilege to travel and work with asylum seekers and refugees in different countries. It feels like this part of the world, people forgot that it's not that we are born to kind of have this identity as a refugee. This refugee identity, anyone can have it. You yourself, in living in a very privileged country, in UK or Denmark, what's happening around the world, the climate changes, the political issues around the world, anybody can become a refugee. Anybody can lose a home. It's not that we choose and select and pick this title. It can happen to anybody. When your life is in a great danger, what you do as a human being? Will you just stay and want to just get shot? Or you will just try everything possible to save your life? This is a human act. You try everything possible to save your life. And through my story, I had to save my voice to make a difference, to keep the hope, especially for the young girls that they have been following my journey. And at some point, I dare them to dream and the hope that one day they will become like me and next person who will take the lead in the movement. And for me, it was so important to save my life. But what I have experienced is, one thing is like losing everything. Missing home, missing people, not knowing that you will return back to the people. I used to call it my home, but after leaving Afghanistan, I don't see home in places anymore. I see home in people. So my home is people. And losing my people, not knowing that I will see them again, that was the toughest one. But what was more difficult was losing an identity. You are someone in your country. And then especially when you're leaving your country in a certain age where you are more established in your country, you had some sort of identity, your people, and then you end up in a country where you don't know anybody. You don't know the weather, you don't know the culture, you don't know the language, you don't know anybody. And you keep being judged as a human being. You keep being judged whatever move you make, based in your culture, based in look. There is so much pressure, but also expectation. You have to prove yourself. So imagine being a woman in Afghanistan, a country like Afghanistan that's continuous battle. And then you leave your country, and then you become a refugee, then you get another title. It's even extra pressure. Some people say, like, but when you take a break, and I'm like, you know what, there's no choice. It's not like I have a choice, oh, today I'm taking a break, or today I'm taking this fight. Usually I don't want to take these fights. I'm put in this situation that I have to stand for myself. In Afghanistan as a refugee, but in Afghanistan as a woman, but here as a refugee, right? I have to prove myself that as a refugee, I'm not taking your money, I'm not taking your job. I'm trying to be a positive resident in your country, trying to do everything possible to show that I'm adding value to the society, forgetting what I've been through trauma, right? Like in these countries, like when you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, you'd call the psychologist. You go through the whole treatment, this is right. This is something that any human being have the right to ask for. That sort of help. But we as a human being, as refugees, people don't have this kind of understanding towards us. It's a trauma we left. We lost everything. And we don't have the time to take a break and reflect, because we have to prove now ourselves that we have to work. We are not taking your job. We are doing everything possible to add value in the country. We are working double and triple, and there is a news that someone did something wrong. And we as a refugee, honestly, I'm not religious, and I never liked the religion. Not that I'm against any religion, but I don't believe in any religion. The only time I am constantly, if something happens and I switch on the TV and I hear there's something happened, someone did something wrong in the community, it just automatically my hands goes like this, and I'm like, I hope it's not a refugee. I hope it's not someone from Middle East, because we will face challenge, we will face problem, because if something happens, people from our community do something. It's one individual do something, the whole community get judged and face problems, and it's discrimination still exists. It's judgment. Not understanding, not sympathy towards another human being, and that's sad. What's our narrative is written by wrong people. I've been with all the challenges. This book is the true testament of my life. With all the challenges and sacrifices I've made in my life, I've tried my best to contribute positively in the society. Not only paid myself and got to pay the tax, but I also hired Danes in my organization, through my organization, and paid them salary. But this will never come to any media, right? A refugee have managed to get actually jobs for Danes? No, that will never get, because that's not a fancy story. No, they will not get clicks. But what will it get clicks is that a refugee did something wrong, and the whole community gets the judgment.
It's really dehumanizing. Like, that's one of the things, the narrative generally around refugees is just so dehumanizing. And like, there's the narrative is that they're weak and desperate and difficult. And like, you read Khalida's story, and like these, and the story of the women that fled like after Taliban retook over, like these are the strongest people in the world. Like, no one has been through a tougher circumstance than they have. No one has fought harder than they have just to survive. Like, they're not weak. We should be celebrating these people who have done extraordinary things, and encouraging them to flourish in the way that they can, because if they've done that with so little, like, imagine what those people could contribute and achieve in society. And yet we spend all our time in society, and I say we, not us literally, but society spends all its time talking about refugees as a drain on society, instead of looking at, you know, the huge amount of prosperity and joy and like intelligence and skill that they would bring to the world if we like gave them the chance to, which is what is like so crazily like backwards about the way we look at people and what they've been through and what they've achieved and what actually matters.
It's so backwards, and just reading this book has enriched me. It's educated me. I feel like a much better person for reading it for so many different reasons. There's so many things in the book that we haven't touched on that I think we should just leave for the reader. Please go and read this book, because there are so many other things in there, traumatic things that happened to your brother, for example. I mean, you need to read the book to fully appreciate and experience those feelings. It's that powerful. There's something else I wanted to talk about. In the epilogue, you write, football governance is a brotherhood controlled and run overwhelmingly by men looking to maintain and extend their power, profile, and personal wealth. And then you talk about the Rubiales kiss. I personally, just from conversations I've had, I understand that there's a lot of men in this country, for example, who do not understand what was wrong with the Rubiales kiss. It blows me away that they don't understand it. You say in the book, the very moment that the Spanish team should have been celebrating their great victory, it was tarnished by men in positions of power. I've not heard, in one sentence there, you've summed up exactly what was wrong with the Rubiales kiss. Anybody can understand that, and I've not heard that so clearly put before. So congratulations on that. And again, this is why these things need addressing. To some men, I think that even to some women in this country, I think, oh, it's just celebrate, it's just a kiss. She didn't look too unhappy. It was so wrong, wasn't it?
It's women's football, it came so far, so long. The athletes, they have given so much to this game to make the game to where it is. The players really contributed, the players, the staff, the journalists who really care about the game. And today that we are hitting the numbers and records in the stadiums is because of that hard work, because of that. We were not given, like women in football is not given just like money to just do what they want to do. Today the stadium is full with people. It's because of the advocacy that were there playing football, but they had to advocate. They had to bring the game to the attention of people. And with all the hard work, where's the moment that is about celebration? The moment that they should be celebrated, and the highlight of that day, it should be the women who achieved so much and after going through a lot. If it's in a balloon d'or, someone receiving a balloon d'or, and there is one man saying one word, and then it changes the whole thing. Or if it's the Women's World Cup, where the celebration of like great achievement of all the people who work so hard from grassroots level to elite level to make that game where it is, then one man comes and they steal the whole attention. And what you hear is not about the records, not about what they have achieved. Next day or next moment, in all the social medias is the news about one man acted wrong. And nobody talks about their talent, and then we have to really fight hard to get that positive stories back. And it's kind of like I don't want to stand against man and talk against man. It's just, it doesn't feel good. But why these men in power and position, they cannot control themselves? What is wrong?
It's an incredible line in the book, and Susie, I can hear your sort of voice echoing that as well, because I've heard you on other podcasts. Yes, other podcasts exist. Talking about how men still dominate football in this country, despite England's women winning the Euros a couple of years ago. How does it change? And you've talked about how, football in this country has been geared towards men for decades and decades and decades. It feels to me like only time will change that, unless there's some dramatic positive action that enhances the women's game, because they won the Euros and it's almost like they didn't win the Euros now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem, isn't it? Because, like, getting people to relinquish power and to relinquish their control over things is very difficult. And the very fact that when women's football in England was banned for 50 years in the 1920s, part of the reason was the fact that women that had been playing football during the war years had been raising money for war hospitals, and then after the war had been raising money for like striking minor families and things like that. Part of the reason the ban came in was because the Football Association didn't like that they didn't control that money that was going into that was coming from football and going out into the world, and that they didn't have a say over it. So the idea that now we're going to be able to wrestle away control and financial power from FIFA, UEFA, all the other confederations, and then local federations it feels impossible, right? But if anything shows you that the impossible is possible, is a story like this, right? Where Khalida helps more than it's getting up to 400 or 500 people now out of the country. Players, entire teams, their family members, whose lives are at risk for playing football. If one person with the help of a great little team around her can do things like that, then really we can make changes in football generally. But it takes a real fight to do it, I think, and I think that's what's going to be necessary, because we see in every FIFA election, in every UEFA election, how sort of how tied up things are, and how when you do get women in positions of power, either they are isolated and driven out of it, or they are sort of puppets and just in position to kind of be someone to point at and to help maintain the status quo. So it's going to take for want of maybe a less extreme word, revolution to properly shake things up. But I think it's a mammoth task, and it needs society to confront football a little bit, because football is a little bit of a mafia world and exists almost separately from the way society is changing generally towards women and women in positions of power and stuff, and those kind of things. So we need a big shift for change to happen, and it has to come sort of almost from everybody to make it so.
Susie, it's been great having you on. Thank you very much for joining us. And Khalida, listen, I find the book uplifting. I find being in your presence uplifting. So thank you so much for coming in. And we didn't even mention Kim Kardashian, who's in the book as well. So go read it. My Beautiful Sisters is a beautiful book, no doubt. The 2024, and listen, this book is so good. Imagine, it's shortlisted. The winner was Conan Island's The Racket, won the 2024 award. Imagine how good that book is. So all of the shortlisted books were truly sensational. I've read them all. They're fantastic, I promise you. The show we did with Connor it was the last one, I believe. It was available as a podcast now. Go to the unspoken section of the podcast on the talkSPORT app. Scroll down, you'll find it there. This one will be there as well. You'll be able to see this on the talkSPORT YouTube channel as well at some point very soon. There are other sportsbook club shows on the podcast, on the app as well, including the shortlisted Rebecca Achenga-Julu Bushell for These Heavy Black Bones, which is an incredible book, and Neil Duncanson, editor of Harry Edwards' Lost Memoir, When I Passed the Statue of Liberty I Became Black, which is just how he did that, I still do not know. It's an amazing book. And now, Foggy, we're on to next year and getting ready for next year's award. Yes, we are. And we want books ASAP to be judged, don't we? If you want to be judged, if you want to try and win it, books have got to come in now.
Yeah, get your books in now, and who knows, you could be January, February's March edition of Book Club.
Yeah, brilliant. Foggy, thank you very much. Once again, Susie and Khalida, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the William Hill Sports Book Club.